Now we want to go deeper into the modeling. And we start with modeling the control view, because that's one of the most important views in our ARIS house. But first, some general aspects regarding modeling. If you look onto the term model, then you have to first understand what model means. Model is obviously not equal to the real world. Model actually is just an extract of the real world. So it's only a part of the real world. Or you could say a simplified representation of the real world. And what means simplified representation? You look onto the real world, for example, your business process or your production process or your activities which somehow need to be done to reach a certain goal. And if you want to model what is important for reaching that goal or for performing that production, then you take out of the reality only the specific aspects which are important for you, in performing your business process. Aspects which are not important for you, for example, the shoe size of the CEO is not important for the business process. Aspects which are not important are not part of the model. So it's basically a simplified representation of the real world, a model. And model contains, in an optimal situation, all specific aspects which are important for mapping your reality to a software model, to a model you then can support by software. And in our approach of the ARIS house, we can distinguish into two different approaches for modeling. The first one is the process view, and the second one is a static view. So process view is something which is important for the sequence of the activity. Something is done, something is happening, and therefore you need to ask some questions which are important for the process view, for this dynamic view. First might be, which processes must be supported? So what activities are important in the business, in the company, such that you need support by software for these processes? There might be some processes where you don't need support. Maybe, for example, the cleaning process of the offices. You have an external company, which is a subcontractor, so to say, and then the cleaning is done completely by the subcontractor, and you might not need support for this process of cleaning, even though the process is important for your work. You need clean offices for your work, but it's not important, so you don't model it. Other processes are indeed important, so you need to model them. And with this question, with this first question, you need to answer which processes need support, and these processes are then important for the modeling. Then the following question might be, what functions are required? You know that there are some processes. Maybe you also know some details about the process, and you might have an idea about the functions which might be required for supporting your process, and therewith you might already be able to name the functions you need, and maybe also to structure the functions you need. Structure maybe regarding the processes or regarding the process structures. So which functions are required? That's one important question you need to answer. Third question, which data are required, or which data are produced for the processes, within the processes. And this refers then finally also to the functions and to the possibilities to put into to put data into the system or to get data out of the system. If you produce somehow data in the process, if you measure something, for example, measure something regarding the product, then you produce data in the process and you somehow need to save them. You need to offer a form for the user, a form where he or she can input the data. Or you might require data, you might require information about which product is to produce. Then you require data and you somehow have to present these data in the views of the information system, in the views of the ERP system. Fourth question, which organizational structures are involved? What people, what departments are involved? And this then refers to this connection between the control view and the organizational view, and is some important part to allocate the organizational resources in a proper way. And last question in this process view aspect, which resources are required? So additionally to the human resources, you would require machines, you would require devices, measurement devices, whatever, and you would have to name these resources which are, let's say, large enough to model them in your process view and which are important enough to somehow maybe are a scarce resource. And the second view is the static view. Static view referring to the information processing tasks, and there is the first question might be, which information processing task with which corresponding information are needed? So kind of modules important for the for performing the data processing, and therefore we ask for these information processing tasks. The second question refers to the application itself. So if you analyze the application regarding the architecture, so to say, then you might identify building blocks which might specify on certain tasks, maybe, or which might specify on certain locations where they are executed. Building block, maybe it's a distributed system and you have a building block which is close to the machine, and another building block which is rather the centralized component, and then you somehow have an architecture and you somehow identify what building blocks are required. So this is static because these building blocks do not move, they do not perform anything, they are not active in the system. They are just they are just mapping to the structure of the application. And finally, you might ask, what are the dependencies between these building blocks? What are the dependencies which are required for the proper function of the functions within these building blocks, and how do the building blocks interact between each other? So three questions which refer to the static view of the model.